So good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. How many of you were in attendance at the symposium yesterday over at the Stamp? Raise your hand. How many of you were not over at the Stamp yesterday? Raise your hand. So those are folks who, one will be introduced to you all, and where's Matt? Matt, we need to find a way to integrate Lee into a table group. And actually, if you check the name badge for Nat Tablante and just put him at that table number, that'll work, because I heard from Nat yesterday and he wasn't feeling too well, so he may not be joining us. So we'll take up his seat with somebody else. So you'll notice that your table groups are very diverse. Okay, that's intentional, and you'll be exploring the diversity in your group a little bit as we get started. And I've also distributed, to the extent that I could, not all of our USDA representatives are here yet, but I have distributed USDA and some network representatives around our tables. And if you don't feel that the discussion that we are facilitating pertains to you directly, just feel free to sit back and listen. Engage as you can. So we are glad that you are all here. I've got to try and manage all this stuff, which is a little bit challenging for me this morning because, okay, it's been a long week. So yesterday, for those who are at the symposium, we spent the day learning about outputs of the Animal Disease Biosecurity Coordinated Agricultural Project team, and a little bit about where folks fit in. And last night we had a wonderful forum learning about some funding opportunities that can be relevant to the area of agricultural biosecurity and the networks that operate in the area of agricultural biosecurity. So we had representation from the National Animal Health Laboratory Network by phone, the National Plant Diagnostic Network, and the Extension Disaster Education Network. And now we are all here to focus on you. Right? So today it's all about us. And that's everyone in this room, because you were invited to this meeting because you do something, some part of your job has something to do with agricultural biosecurity. And we're hoping that by coming together and talking about what we do, what we think would be wildly successful in what we do, and how can we get there and how can we do it better, that we will all be able to do our jobs better. And we're going to be talking about some communication strategies that can help us along the way when we're talking to people to motivate them to implement things that are helpful in terms of agricultural biosecurity. I have to not talk too long, so we're going to go to the next slide here. Okay. So what I wanted to do was to explain why I got into this in the first place. How many of you know Dr. Steve Van Weer, have heard him speak, have seen one of his presentations? So there's a few of you, okay? And some of you have gotten to know him through this project. And in some ways, what I do now is because of meeting Dr. Steve Van Weer. So when I came to Vermont, I got some funding to do biosecurity, and I thought, oh yeah, we just need to help protect animal health. We don't have to worry about that stuff like foot and mouth disease in England. That was kind of my attitude, right? And then, it's just kind of these coincidental things that happen. I was sent to a training called Foreign Animal Disease Response for Emergency Responders. Foreign Animal Disease Response for Emergency Responders. I'm like, what the heck are emergency responders doing? Like firemen, policemen doing, learning about foreign animal disease response. And I get sent to this meeting, and it's all state veterinarians except for me and another extension colleague from Vermont. And Dr. Steve was there. And Dr. Steve's like, oh, you're from Vermont, let me talk to you. And he shared this presentation with us there. It wasn't part of the training program. It was something that he had developed outside of that. And it's called Into the Valleys of Death. It's named for one of the songs that's embedded in the slideshow. And Dr. Steve spent over 6 months in England in 2001 assisting with the response to foot and mouth disease. And what he came back with, the message he came back with, applies not just to the dairy farmers that I worked with in Vermont. He's applying those lessons to the swine producers as they're preparing for the possibility of African swine fever entering this country. He's concerned for the small producer, the forgotten producer, the producer who's going to say, I don't want the government on my property. He wants everyone to understand what might happen, what their role is, and how to come out the other side. Because this is a story he told me that has stuck with me, and I think it will stick with you, even with my poor retelling of it. So every farm that he was on that was an infected farm that was depopulated, he always gave his card and said, call me anytime. And a few days after being on a farm that was depopulated, he got a call from the farmer. The farmer's on the phone. The farmer says, Steve, went to me barn, me cows aren't there. On the phone. That stuck with Dr. Steve, and that has stuck with me. That it's not just about an animal issue. It's not just about an economic issue. It's about a very personal issue that can affect the survival of the people involved in livestock systems. And we need to pay attention to that. So everything that we can do to communicate to people what could happen and to help them prepare and have that resilience because they have an awareness of what might happen and a sense of where they're at and how they could come out the other side, the better chances are that they will come out the other side. So that's what's brought me here. But now I've brought all of you here. And I had Joanna Cummings create this graphic for me because I want to represent, maybe somebody can play around with the lights and see if we can get these big chandeliers off. So we've designed a graphic for you, and you'll see in the center of this graphic is the farm, okay? Right in the center. So it looks pretty, but just represent, just think whatever farm you work with. That's in the center here, okay? So you've got a farm, you've got land, maybe it's growing crops, you've got farm animals, and you've got farmer and service providers who are interacting with the farmer. Represented here, just down the road, there's some folks who are, we need the cans, but not the overheads. We have a university down the road. And the university, maybe it's a land grant, maybe it's a vet college, maybe it's got a diagnostic lab, and there's probably research going on there, education going on there, and maybe an extension division associated with that university, okay? So I expect that just about everyone here comes from that part of the road, okay? So we're folks who are embedded at land grants or in extension or at labs or vet schools, okay? And we have some role, whether we're creating new knowledge or we're sharing that knowledge with farmers who can implement it, right? And in terms of agricultural biosecurity, it's how do we protect the health of the plants and animals that are important to their agricultural system. So why do we do that, right? So maybe you get the so what question from your supervisors and bosses, and every time you hear that, what I recommend that you do is just turn that to so that. What is it that you're doing so that your desired outcome will happen? So why are we interacting with this? Why are we growing food? Why are we trying to keep the plants and animals healthy? So that we have food for people. We have food security. We have economic prosperity in our rural areas. We have healthy animals, healthy people, healthy environment, okay? That's why we're doing what we're doing. So today we're here to see how, as a community of practice, we're going to consider what it would mean as a community of practice to how can we use that to do a better job of getting appropriate information to producers in an understandable and actionable way so that we protect our food supply, the health of ourselves, our animals, the environment, and the economic vitality of rural America. So I've you've got on your tables kind of an outline of the agenda, and this is an even more outlined version of the agenda, because it's a very busy agenda from the perspective of the facilitation that we're doing, that you're going to be going from one activity to another, and we're going to try to insert the breaks and the lunch at the appropriate times, okay? So things are going to just keep on moving. There will be a break at whatever time it says for the break. What time does it say? 9:45, and the coffee and fruit kebabs will be here at that break time. And we will have, I'm just going to invite all of you who are checking out today, because probably all of you are checking, well, maybe not all, but those of you who are checking out of the hotel today, if you want to leave your luggage in the back side of the room, we've got room, so you can just put it there if you need to. So we're going to be walking through helping you understand where you are at in terms of communication and channels and strategies and approaches. And then you're going to hear some stories about ways that we can communicate about what we're doing in agricultural biosecurity. We're going to learn or get a new perspective possibly on what a community of practice is, what it could be. We're going to talk about what that could be. We're going to have lunch. We're going to have a wonderful keynote presentation after lunch, which I think you'll really enjoy. And then we're going to come back around to, okay, so maybe we raised some challenges about forming a community of practice earlier, and how are we going to find solutions to those? How are we going to move forward? And then we're going to wrap up and be out of here at 3:15. So fasten your seatbelts. Actually, don't fasten your seatbelts, because we want you to be moving around at times. So, all right, so we started a little behind schedule. I apologize for that. But we're going to get back on schedule, because there's a slot where that works.